we connect on the dance floor. There's something that happens to you. You don't necessarily know the people's names, but you've shared something and you're bonded and we have each other's backs and there's community there. It's just gorgeous what happens, and it's an age-old technology that we're tapping into.
I'm thrilled to be talking with Leigh Marz, author, collaboration consultant, and rhythm and motion dance instructor. She and Justin Zorn co-authored the book Golden, The Power of Silence in a World of Noise, published by HarperCollins and translated into 15 languages worldwide. Leigh's favorite way to find internal silence is on the thumping dance floor. She's a choreographer and dance instructor with Rhythm and Motion, also known as R&M, a high-energy dance workout program that cultivates a welcoming, accepting atmosphere for all people, regardless of age, ability, or background. Leigh's third ampersand is as a collaboration consultant. She's led diverse initiatives, including a training program to promote an experimental mindset among multi-generational teams at NASA. She's also facilitated a decade-long cross-sector collaboration to reduce toxic chemicals in partnership with the Green Science Policy Institute, Harvard University, Kaiser Permanente, and many others. Leigh, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jessica. It's so good to be with you.
It's so good to be with you, and I feel so grateful to have you in my life. Most weeks, I dance with you on Tuesdays and Fridays in your R&M class at Berkeley Ballet Theater, and it is so joyful and so wonderful. I can't tell you how much dance has uplifted my life. And you often say that dance is your medicine. What has your personal journey looked like with dance?
Oh, wow. It's been winding, and that's not an uncommon thing to hear from us instructors and people in general. But I was basically born to dance, and I knew that as a kid. I started pretty young, watching shows like, some of you of a certain age will remember Solid Gold. So these like TV dance shows, and I would just be glued to this. And there I learned this fan kick where you do a whole round with your leg, and I must have done a million fan kicks, and got into it. Finally, my aunt, we did not have the funds at that time at all to pay for, dance classes and costumes. There's a lot of prohibitive, expenses to engaging, the dance world even as a young person. Mm. But my aunt offered to pay for some of those dance classes, and that kind of started me on my journey. Although I'm remembering there was a dance class even before that when I was living in New Jersey that was really free form. It was an African diaspora dance class where they did a lot of clacking of sticks and some drumming. And it was in fact, I think the joyful, expansive experience I had there as a 5-year-old girl is in many ways what I'm trying to create for us over and over again, even with layers of choreography and stuff. It was so beautifully done. So it was pretty joyful on the front end. And then as I went into adolescence and teenage years, you're relating to your body with a mirror. You're basically growing up looking at a mirror. And so things got quite complicated in that phase. And it was anything but silent as just to cross over to that ampersand. But it got very noisy, and like many of the young women I was dancing with, I went down a track of eating disorders and really just a lot of issues around my body, and I no longer wanted to be in front of a mirror dancing and moving it. But I came back around in college with a dance company I joined that was modern and pretty experimental and edgy and fun. And then also came back around to West African dance and African diaspora, where again, feeling very free. And so I've been pretty happy with my dance journey since my 20s. And it's really just been about continuing to make space for this thing and really deepening that like appreciation and acknowledgement. This is so much more than a workout. It is a spiritual practice, and we connect on the dance floor. There's something that happens to you. You don't necessarily know the people's names, but you've shared something and you're bonded, and we have each other's backs, and there's community there. And it's just gorgeous what happens. And it's an age-old technology that we're tapping into. Dance is like, we've been doing this as long as we've been humaning. So It's beautiful to partake.
It absolutely is. And there are times in R&M where I feel tears starting to well up, especially when we get into our big circle and just being there with other people. There's something so incredibly powerful and moving. And it's interesting you bring up the mirrors, because in the class there are, the mirrors on the wall, but you as the instructor, you are also our mirror. So R&M is a follow along class. You can, as a student, be at any level. But the instructors, you all need to know the routines, how to mirror them, how to like start one way and then flip around. And then I think there's over 1,000 routines. And you mentioned you auditioned to become an R&M instructor at 49 years old. And as we all know, like our memories start, not being as sharp as they were in our 20s. What was it like to do that?
Oh my gosh. Well, there was a lot of periodic, like, what am I doing? What am I thinking? I'll back up to say that it was a student who told me, I was teaching Zumba. It was a student who told me, there's this thing called rhythm and motion. And, she had experienced my choreography for years. And she said, I just think there's a fit there. So I followed her lead. I was so grateful for that, for her seeing me and introducing me. Even though it's been here for, over 40 years, I had never encountered it. So I end up, showing up in my colleague's class. Her name is Rena and Marie Gittery. And I was like, yes, what do I have to do? How soon can I do this? So yeah, that year, and it changes, but that year we were, I guess, kind of behind on getting instructors up, into the training program. And so there was a big, there was a big supply of us, and we decided to do it, or they decided to do an audition. And it felt like chorus line to me, like high stress. So I wasn't even, it's like I didn't even know what I didn't know. Like the memory part wasn't even on my mind. I was just thinking, how physically am I going to do this? How do I, the cardio levels are extraordinary, as you know, especially if you're trying to then also give auditory commands in the space, since it's so follow along and so active. So anyway, I don't know, in my mind's eye, there were hundreds of people there at that audition. I think in reality, there might have been 40. And
that's a lot still.
That was still a lot. And somehow or another, I made it through that cut. At this point, there's 3 of us remaining who are doing that from those days, at instructor days. There's natural attrition as you engage, like you're saying, the level of memory and level of mastery that, I've really truly never done anything harder, more challenging, because it's challenging mentally, it's challenging physically. There's a lot that you need to bring to it emotionally to be attuned to the space that you're trying to create for the people that are in your class. So it's the most joyful job I have, and in many ways the most by far demanding. I'll add, there's one joke. At that time, I was doing that work with NASA. About the same time as the audition, I was preparing to do a PowerPoint for the senior team of NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. And, this was like how to synthesize 3 years of work with them and a lot of data. And I'm giving this to the top engineers of the world. And I am just for the record, not one of my ampersands is not engineer or mathematic genius. I am not those things. So I was definitely working hard on it. But it was nothing compared to this process. It was easy. Preparing for the preparation for the senior team presentation for NASA, was by far easier than this audition and my training with rhythm and motion.
I remember the first day I came in probably December 2024, and you pulled me aside. You saw right away it was my first class. You said, there's no need to be perfect. Just start with your feet, add the arms when possible. Just try not to run into anybody. Great advice.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your book, Golden. You and your co-author, Justin, attuned to silence, listened deeply, and wrote the book over the course of 6 years. How did you choose silence as the main focus of the book?
Well, we were introduced by a friend, and the reason we were introduced is because this friend felt like, the consulting, what I call collaboration consulting work, looked a little similar. He's younger than me, and so I guess the idea was that I might be offering a little bit of mentorship there. But then we were discussing things we care about or we're interested in, and initially we decided, we're interested in this idea of authenticity and leadership, because this was a time when there was a lot of talk about authentic leadership, and that was sort of being depicted mostly like by blurting out whatever thought came to your mind, but that actually is not authentic leadership in the way, at least, philosophically, and there's a beautiful tradition of looking at authenticity. So we took that exploration into writing a magazine article that was published in Time. And that was because of Justin's massive experience as a writer, and having published by now hundreds of articles. But what we initially pitched that to Harvard Business Review, and they said, "Oh no, this is a little too political, but pitch us some other ideas." So we did pitch an idea that was kind of like, actually 3 ideas that were a little managerial, and I don't know if you've seen those, just zipped up and whatever. But we have had this conversation about the power of silence to help identify strategy. That really, if we can get quiet instead of scrambling for the next strategic move in some situation. Justin's background is in DC and in politics as a legislative director for 3 members of Congress. So he's looking at strategy like that. I'm looking at these cross-sector strategy pieces. If we can get those groups quiet, which is never easy, we're going to get a lot closer to the truth. So we added a 4th topic for Harvard Business Review, which was just silence, and we as strategy or something like that, as a way to clarify strategy. And to our surprise, they said silence, and go for it. No direction, absolutely no direction. So we wrote an article for them called "The Busier You Are, the More You Need Quiet." I think actually they titled it that, which I think was we titled it something really cumbersome and, smart sounding or blah, 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 whatever. But they titled it something accessible. The busier you are, the more you need quiet time. And that went viral. So that's when we just thought we were doing a little bit of article writing. But really we thought, let's step back and see what's being asked of us. Because he had never had that experience in all the dozens and dozens and hundreds of articles he'd written. And it was only the second time I'd written anything. And it just resonated deeply with us, but we took it seriously. So I would say that process of are we going to move forward was about a 5 or 6 month process for us to say, okay, we need to meet each other's families. We need to kind of weave our lives together and see what would it mean to write a book about silence. So that's what we did.
And Golden was published in 2022. It's been 4 years, and seems like the world, in my perspective, has only gotten noisier. What has the reception to the book looked like over the last 4 years, and how has it changed as the times have changed?
I would say the reception has not changed if people are able to find it through all the noise. That's the issue, I think, right now with not just our book, but there are to me, that feels like there's a number of books that are trying to get our attention about, for example, how loud the world is, how scarce, good, exquisite human attention is, how scarce it is, how everything's clamoring for it. Maybe less so about internal noise and anxiety, but there's some books about that. So it just, as well as like, where do we find our, moral compass, our values, our spirit, our guidance these days, our alignment in this world that could be described so many ways, but we're describing it as full of noise. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's a good number of books that are making the same call to readers. And we're grateful to be a part of that. And our challenge across the board with these is cutting through the noise so that it can actually reach the people it needs to be. And you need to reach it. So we have never had the experience of anyone saying, well, why are you writing a book about silence? Or, what's the problem with noise? There's just a thing, like some authors get met with some resistance or like, oh, there's already books about that. We just didn't, it was just like, yes. And it's only more of a yes. And, there was some statistic that the CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, back in the early 2000s said, every 2 days we create as much content as we did from the dawn of civilization to now. And that was 23 years ago, that quote. So I can't even fathom. So, I wish I knew this book was going out into the world and touching hearts and changing. I certainly hear from people, and so I'm so grateful for that. And that it's being translated into different languages and now paperback, making it more affordable, all these things, or that the podcasts reach people, all these things. But it's just a tiny drop, and in the cacophony that we're in, I'm grateful to be a part of it, but we got a long way to go,
Let's take a moment to reflect on this question. Where do you need more silence in your life? Are you an Ampersand looking for community, inspiration, and resources? Come join us in The Cohort, where we help you grow and scale your creative and professional aspirations. If you're looking for more dedicated support, I offer executive coaching for business leaders, people managers, creatives, and of course, Ampersands. Find out more about The Cohort and one-on-one coaching at jessicawan.com. Now, back to the show. In your book, you and Justin interviewed Jarvis J. Masters, an innocent man on death row, and he's since become a close friend of yours. How has this impacted your own perspective on life?
Oof, wow. Getting to know Jarvis? Oh, what a blessing. This is, okay, so we've got like rhythm and motion is one of the greatest blessings in my life. Yeah. There are many blessings in my life. Jarvis J. Masters is another one. So he is an innocent man on death row. He was in San Quentin for 42 years, in solitary confinement for 22 years, longer than any human ever in the history of that prison. And more recently, Newsom, I'll use the word disbanded. It's a little bit a strange word, but disbanded death row as we know it, where they're all in one place, those 500 to 600 men, and they're spread throughout California in prisons that can handle that level. So they're sort of more integrated into the prison system across California. So he's now 4 hours away from me. But what I'll say about our friendship is that, we had multiple interviews with him, Justin and I together. And then, when he was at San Quentin, he's just a stone's throw from me. So I started to come see him. I started to see him, I could see him quite a bit. My daughter started coming with me, my husband, it just felt to me like I had this Jarvis-sized hole in my being, in my heart, and he had a Leigh-sized, hole in his heart, and we talk many times a week. And my commitment is really to his liberation in whatever way I can help. And so there's, case is now, there's another appeal. There's some legislation in California, the Racial Justice Act, that holds some promise for going to the way beginnings of his court hearings to look for racial bias, which, of course, there was. Jarvis is a black man. He was the thing he was accused of and sentenced for was sharpening a weapon that killed a prison guard at San Quentin. So that whole time he's been living there, like on the scene of the crime and the stressors of that environment. But now he's out of that environment into California Men's Colony, and there's new legislation. There's sort of new perspective on how maybe his freedom can be found. And those who want to know more about him, there's a website called freejarvis.org. If you don't mind sharing that, that'd be great. And he's written 2 books that are he's a New York Times bestselling author because Oprah picked his book, That Bird Has My Wings, for her book group. And it's beautiful writing. I mean, he's just a beautiful human, beautiful writing. I'll add one thing that I once, was talking to him about how difficult it is to be imprisoned when he's innocent. And he said, well, it would be a lot more difficult if I knew I were guilty. Mm-hmm. And so that's the kind of man he is. He's like, he's sitting, waiting for a system to correct itself that is not built to correct itself, advocating for himself, writing. He's touched so many people's lives, mine, my daughter, my husband, literally, many huge Tibetan Buddhist community, but all kinds of people. He loves young people. He loves being involved in their lives. And yeah, he's a bodhisattva. Living in prison on death row as an innocent man.
An amazing story.
Thanks for asking about him. Yeah, he's an amazing human. I do hope people learn more about him.
Let's talk a little bit about your collaboration consulting work. You have led these diverse initiatives, including a training program at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center and a decade-long cross-sector collaboration to reduce toxic chemicals. What do you love about this work?
I think even just talking with you is highlighting something that I realize I love about this work, and it is the ampersand of it all. Like if you're talking about a cross-sector group, you're talking about people with really different perspectives in the work. And in the case of the cross-sector group working to reduce and remove toxic chemicals from our homes and our planet, then you're talking about people who are coming from the academic, sectors and looking at it as academics. You're talking about NGOs who are looking at it from a consumer and advocate perspective, environmentalists of all kinds. You're looking at government entities that regulate these or don't, however that looks. You're looking at business manufacturers and retailers and their engagement. The businesses we work with and the retailers and the manufacturers care to be working on this issue. So that's why they're there. So there's a shared mission, but super diverse perspectives and ways that they're coming to it. And then what I love to do as a consultant is also invite in the other parts of their lives. Like, we have birders, we have mountaineers, we have cellists, we have whatever their ampersands are. And then that's where new thinking really arises. That's where novel strategy arises. So it depends on the ampersand, because otherwise we would just come to these problems in the same old way, which is not what we're gathering with so much, energy and resource and time. We're gathering to do something breakthrough and novel on these otherwise in seemingly intractable problems. So we might bring in some silence and bring in some opportunity for their other selves to enter the room and think upon this problem. I literally have an activity that's about that. And then we spend days together, coming at this hopefully really differently. And that cross-sector is one I'm most proud of. It's been about 14 years we've been working together now. And they are the ones moving the needle on PFAS. They're the ones highly fluorinated chemicals that are addressing fire retardants and different things in our products and antimicrobials and all, these are the people you want in charge of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're an ampersand cultivator. I love it so much. What else ties together your work as an author, collaboration consultant, dancer, choreographer, dance instructor?
What I've come to find is there's a complementary nature. I'll just take writing and dancing. And now this body of mine wants to dance. It does not want to sit at a desk and write.
Yep.
Ever. And that, of course, consulting has a certain level of that desk work too. So just even the ability to have a really beautiful chunk of writing time, but then to step away and then to move. And I can remember, especially in the most active parts of the writing, getting to the point where my brain is completely full. Not one more thing can happen. Not even an edit can happen. I'm just done. But there's dance and there's the class I'm teaching in a day. And so I'm okay, let's move the body. And then lo and behold, that's how I'm going to come back to this piece of writing. And so they're just working so beautifully. And even the way the research on silence and how much it was teaching me about the importance of it, just to bring in all the more reverence and appreciation and value to the dance I was doing, to not diminish it, minimize it it's just this little hobby. It's so not. It's just, again and again and again, some of us maybe are better at this than others, but sometimes it's about really learning to honor and recognize and lift up these places that are the ampersand places, because we tend to be forced to pick one. Well, I refuse. I will not do that. And then of course, the writing and what it would mean to my consulting to really actually stretch these groups into finding silence together, a silence that's shared is a magnified silence. And it really did help clarify strategy. I have found, in groups, and, at a certain point, it was not so edgy and strange to ask for that. I would bring more and more open space to my retreats so that people could actually drop in instead of packing them just densely with this content and PowerPoints and all. There's a lot of bad habits in there to try to give people their money's worth, but it's not what's going to give them the outcomes they want. So, and then I'd even bring dance into, so my collaboration consulting, because my line with them is there's always time for a 3-minute dance party. So 3-minute dance party, you're up out of your seats. Let's move our bodies. We've been sitting for too long. We've been pondering this really difficult, overwhelming question of let's say heavy metals or something. It's hard stuff. We better shake it out and shake it through and then come back to it. So they're I have to say, it probably is when I've been happiest professionally, is when really I started opening those boundaries between the two and bringing them into another. And I think that's when I've done my best work by far.
That's such a great answer. One goal we have with this podcast is to co-create the Ampersand Manifesto, principles for leading a multi-passionate life. What are some of the principles that you live by?
I've never been a real fan of being in a box or even coloring, but coloring in the lines. So that full expression is part of what I'm here to do. And the more I'm in that place of full expression, I just can see the quality of my work go up. So I think there's something in there about being, the permission for full expression with there's a responsibility for impact there, but it's really, most of us are really zipped up and keeping it too close and maybe being too categorical to really be doing our best work. So there's a full permission piece, I have to say.
Leigh, it has been so wonderful talking with you. Folks, if you are anywhere near an R&M class, come and dance with us. Check out rhythmandmotion.com. You can find Leigh's book and consulting work at leighmarz.com and estrellastrategies.com. And we'll link to these in the show notes. If you liked this show, share it with your friends and fellow ampersands. And make sure to hit the follow button to be notified when new episodes drop. It would mean the world to us if you took 2 minutes to rate and review the show. Just go to the main show page on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and look for the stars. I had a chance to listen back on my interview with Leigh, and I wanted to share a few key takeaways. 1. Dance as a mirror. Leigh shared how her journey with dance reflected how she was feeling in her own body at different ages and stages in her life, and how that related to her internal world. There was a long time in my life that I would not have identified with being a dancer, even though I did ballet, jazz dance, and Chinese folk dance as a kid, and later on dabbled with salsa and ballroom. In my earlier years, dance was about getting it right, or being good at it, or looking the part. But in my 40s, where I've definitely felt the most comfortable and confident in myself, R&M has mirrored those feelings of joy and acceptance right back to me. 2. Being an Ampersand cultivator. I love how Leigh has the big ampersand of body work and mind work. And I love that within her consulting practice, it's also all about the ampersands, bringing together different sectors and academic disciplines. I'm really inspired to hear that Leigh is bringing the idea of ampersand to all these people she's working with, fostering innovation and new ways of thinking. 3. Flow between the worlds. This has come up on the show before. Having multiple worlds allows you a productive place to go when you're feeling stuck or maxed out on one or the other. There's the famous example of Albert Einstein going to play the violin whenever he got stuck on a physics problem. And Leigh gave the example of going to dance after a long writing session. Instead of thinking about the two as separate, it's more of a flow. Energy being produced that can be applied in other ways, and uplifting many areas of your life holistically.